Kumiho, a fox that survives for 1,000 years in Korean mythology, does not earn wisdom or peace. It earns the ability to wear a human face, and it uses that face to kill you. The Kumiho is a nine-tailed fox spirit, almost always female, almost always beautiful, and almost always standing between a man and his liver. According to Korean folk tradition, she seduces her targets with an appearance so convincing that victims rarely suspect anything until it is far too late. With small details, 9 tails glimpsed beneath a robe, eyes catching candlelight the wrong way, like an animal's, being the only warning most men ever get. She consumes the liver or heart of her victims to absorb their life force, and in some versions of the myth she is working toward a goal. Eat 100 livers across 1,000 days, and she transforms permanently into a human, shedding the monster entirely. That detail makes her uniquely unsettling among mythological predators. She is not purely evil so much as she is desperate, trapped between two natures, willing to hollow out as many people as necessary to reach the one she wants. Some regional tellings frame her as tragic. Most frame her as something you should be very glad you have never met at dusk on an empty road. Groac'h. The Groac'h comes from Breton folklore, the Celtic tradition of the Brittany region of northwestern France, and she is one of the more quietly disturbing creatures on this list, precisely because her method is so patient. She lives beneath a lake on the Isle of Loch, appearing to travelers as a beautiful enchantress offering hospitality, warmth, and company. The moment a man accepts, she transforms him into a fish and adds him to her collection. Not kills him, collects him. According to Émile Souvestre's 1844 compilation of Breton folk tales, Le Foyer Breton, she has been doing this for a very long time, which means the lake beneath her island home is populated with an unknown number of conscious, transformed men, aware of exactly what has happened to them and completely unable to do anything about it. The imprisonment is the point. Death would be a mercy the Groac'h has no interest in offering. She is defeated in some versions by a man who resists her long enough to turn her own magic against her, but the tale never specifies what happens to the fish already in the lake. That part, the story simply leaves alone. Tatzelwurm. The Tatzelwurm is a creature out of Alpine mythology spanning Switzerland, Austria, and Bavaria, and the thing that separates it from standard serpent folklore is how wrong it looks. Its name translates roughly to claw worm in German, which describes the body accurately enough. The hind half is a limbless snake, thick and scaled, while the front half ends in 2 powerful claws and a head described variously as cat-like or lizard-like, sitting on a serpent neck in a way that refuses to resolve into anything natural. It hibernates deep in mountain rock crevices and attacks without provocation when disturbed, which, given that it exhales a toxic breath capable of killing animals and humans at close range, makes stumbling across its hiding place a particularly final kind of mistake. What distinguishes Tatzelwurm reports from pure mythology is their persistence. Alleged sightings were documented as recently as the early 20th century, filed by people who described the creature with consistent physical details across regions that had no communication with each other. Descriptions vary enough between regions that some accounts drop the claws entirely, leaving only the wrong-headed serpent. That variation doesn't make it less disturbing. It makes it harder to dismiss. Camazotz. Camazotz appears in the Popol Vuh, the sacred Quiche Maya text, as the Lord of the House of Bats, one of the nightmare trial chambers the hero twins must survive while passing through Xibalba, the Mayan underworld. His name translates directly as Death Bat, and his physical description does not soften that at all. An enormous bat with a nose shaped like a flint sacrificial blade, the same kind used in ritual decapitation. That blade nose is not decorative. When the hero twin Hunahpu makes the mistake of sleeping with his head outside his blowgun for protection during the night trial, Camazotz strikes in a single pass and removes his head completely. An actual death of a protagonist mid-myth, not a near miss. The remaining twin has to improvise a replacement head from a gourd to continue. Camazotz was not a peripheral figure in Mesoamerican belief. Bat iconography, associated with death and night, appears across Maya art, predating the written Popol Vuh, suggesting his worship was widespread and long-standing. He is not a monster invented to be defeated. He wins, at least once, against heroes specifically chosen by the gods to be undefeatable. Bakunawa. According to Visayan and Bicolano mythology in the Philippines, the world was not always lit by a single moon. There were 7. The Bakunawa, an enormous sea serpent with a mouth described as wide as a lake, rose from the ocean and swallowed 6 of them before the gods intervened and forced it to stop, leaving only the one moon that remains. Its body is not purely serpentine. Regional descriptions give it gills, small wings, and long whiskers, producing something stranger and more wrong than a simple giant snake. During lunar eclipses, ancient Filipinos would beat drums, bang pots, and shout as loudly as possible to frighten the Bakunawa into spitting the moon back out, a ritual that continued in some communities well into the historical period. The Bakunawa is not evil in a personal sense. It does not hate humanity or plot against it. It is simply enormous, hungry, and capable of ending the sky as a side effect of feeding. The 6 moons it already swallowed are gone. There is nothing in the mythology that suggests it could not decide to take the 7th, Gashadokuro. The Gashadokuro is built from collective suffering rather than individual evil, which is part of what makes it so difficult to reason with or survive. According to Japanese folklore, it forms from the accumulated rage and starvation of soldiers or civilians who died without burial, their resentment fusing into a single enormous skeleton, in some accounts described as 15 times the height of a human, that roams between midnight and dawn in near total silence. For something that size, the silence is deliberate and inexplicable, and the only warning a traveler gets before it reaches them is a sudden ringing in the ears. It grabs lone people, bites off their heads, and drinks the blood directly. It cannot be killed in any conventional sense, because it is not one creature. It is an aggregate of dozens or hundreds of the unquiet dead, and destroying one part accomplishes nothing against the whole. The iconography of the Gashadokuro is strongly associated with the 18th century artist Toriyama Sekien, whose illustrated catalogs of Japanese supernatural beings formalized many creatures that existed previously in oral tradition. Whether the Gashadokuro predates Sekien as a genuine folk belief or was substantially shaped by his depiction is worth noting. But the image he fixed in place, the massive silent skeleton hunting at midnight, is not one that leaves you easily. Nuckelavee. The Nuckelavee is, by reasonable consensus among folklorists of European mythology, one of the most purely horrifying creatures ever described in sustained detail by any tradition. It comes from the Orkney Islands off the northern coast of Scotland, recorded most comprehensively by the 19th century folklorist Walter Traill Dennison, and the reason it has endured is simple. It has no skin, not as a metaphor. The Nuckelavee rises from the sea as a horse-like creature fused with a rider, and every inch of both is exposed. Black blood pumping visibly through yellow veins, white muscle fiber contracting in open air, a single massive eye burning red above a lipless mouth. The rider has one arm extending directly from its chest rather than a shoulder, long enough to reach the ground. Its breath, exhaled in a slow-rot stench visible on cold coastal air, could wilt crops across entire fields, spread disease through livestock herds, and trigger epidemics that coastal Orcadians attributed to it for generations. It is not merely a monster. It functions as a force of environmental catastrophe, a living explanation for drought, plague, and failed harvests. The one thing that stops it is fresh running water, which it cannot cross, meaning those who knew the folklore would sprint for the nearest stream and pray they reached it first. Denison's account describes Orcadians who spoke of it in the 19th century with the same fear they would give a real and present danger. No skin, one red eye, the sea at your back. If you want to see more, click the video on screen now.